you gonna play now?
Bobby, I don't know. But whatsoever I play, it's got to be funky. Funky, funky, funky.
Funky what?
You wanna get down?
Funky.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network. That's right, folks. Don't ever forget, you got to go out there and rate and subscribe the Funky Politics Show. Rate and subscribe. We love the feedback. We're also supported by Memphis Light, Gas, and Water. That's right, MLGW. Doc Ward in D.C. sitting right here in the chairs. Doc, what's up, my brother?
Man, it's summertime and the living is easy.
Oh,
fish are jumping and the cotton is high. Your president's rich and his wife is good looking, and everybody in his cabinet may or not be Russian spies.
I thought you were gonna say some other things. I'm glad you didn't do. This is family radio.
We just called it like we see.
Got to.
And we've been seeing it too much. And sooner or later, the truth will be revealed. You know, truth, when I was growing up, was an acronym with total responsibility under tumult and hostility. You have to be able to tell the truth through everything that goes down. In The Merchant of Venice, Lancelot always says, murder cannot be hid, but at length the truth will come out. Mark 4:22, for there is nothing hid which shall not be manifested, neither was anything kept secret, but that it should be revealed. Galatians 6:7 says, you reap what you sow.
Uh-oh.
And a Russian phrase says, as the call, so is the echo. So now we find ourselves at a time where the truth has got to come out. Come out about our country, come out about our election, come out about our president, come out about what type of people we really are.
Yeah.
If 9/11 showed us that we were a people too that lived in a lot of luxury to where we couldn't believe a terrorist attack could occur on our soil, what does this time is going to tell us about our integrity? Do we rush the elections along? Or do we take the time to understand what happened, when it happened, and who knew about it? Only then can we really find not just the peace that's within us, but the true patriotism and heart of what we're about as a country. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. We're going to talk about that inner peace, right?
Inner peace, baby. You know who we got on our show?
Who we got?
Paulo Nunes-Ueno.
Right.
He's an expert in sustainable transportation and an effective urban solutions for transit and mobility and parking.
And he's going to talk to us about how transportation is more than just getting from A to B, but it is a public health necessity.
Exactly.
There you go.
And you know who else we got? Sheri Riley, empowerment speaker, life strategist, and author of Exponential Living. And boy, she sounds good from Kentucky.
Oh, I love this woman. She's going to talk to us about exponential living, finding peace within yourself to succeed, and how do we maintain that same peace in the era of truth that we are in right now.
That's right.
So y'all gotta listen to this and stay tuned to Funky Politics. We're going to be right back.
Wanna see you with it, show could treat you right. Give me just a minute of your time tonight. We both are here to have fun, so let it go.
Okay, listen up. This is Samuel L. Jackson, and I want to talk to you about energy conservation. If your idea of energy conservation is sitting in a hammock underneath a tree, then I'm talking to you. I want you to weather strip around the windows and doors. Use compact fluorescent light bulbs. Repair leaky faucets and toilets. Don't waste energy. Don't make me have to come to your house and inspect it. Call 544-MLGW or go to MLGW.com and tell them Samuel L. Jackson sent you.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network, sponsored by MLGW, Memphis Light, Gas, and Water. You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network. As always, DC sitting here right along with a very capable co-host, Doc Ward. Doc, how are you again this evening, sir?
I'm more than capable.
More than capable. We are visiting this evening with Paulo Nunes-Ueno, who happens to be a wonderfully talented expert on sustainable transportation and effective urban solutions based in Seattle. Welcome to Funky Politics there, Paulo. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
First of all, why don't you talk a little bit about what you've done and what your history has been?
I've worked my whole career really on helping cities figure out how to implement an effective transportation solution, whether that's transit, whether it's parking, whether it's thinking about how to accommodate and integrate the new transportation technologies like Uber and Lyft and other things. Bikes are also have been part of my portfolio. But really, this question of infrastructure is big because, these problems are going to be with us for years and years and years, and we need to be able to have lasting solutions to providing options for people to drive less. But before we really start talking about big infrastructure investments, I think, we folks that work in transportation across the country, what we see is that we need to get folks talking about the difficult conversation. Like America, every single city in America has a bus system.
Right.
But mostly they have the bus system that they had in the 1930s because it's hard to make changes. It's hard to get the political will together to upgrade those routes. Nobody remembers that, we had to deviate this one route because this one church asked for this deviation and they don't do the Sunday dinner anymore.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network. Go ahead, Paulo.
And so what's important, before we get distracted with, and I'm not saying, look, don't get me wrong, we need the light rail, we need the heavy rail lines. I've spent some time in Japan. I love the bullet trains. We need to invest in those things. But before we do all of that, we need to look at the service that we're running today and ask ourselves, does this still match the population centers that we have? Does it match the job centers that we have? What can we do to make the buses easier to use?
Well, can you do this? Can you talk a little bit about, because I get it 100%, about how important it is that a transit system in any major city is not just looked at as a means for people that can't afford cars or people that are economically disadvantaged to get from point A to point B. A true effective bus system is one that serves the community and actually becomes a symbol or an opportunity for growth for everybody from all classes. Can you talk a little about, because I think the stigma, the first thing when people don't want to move forward is that they stigmatize what buses are about. Because as you said, historically, and let's just be real with it, the bus system was a manner of getting people from, getting black people from their neighborhood to go serve white people in their homes and be home workers and gardeners and all these other things. But it's much more than that now with these changing times. So can you talk a little bit more about that aspect of it, about how important it is for a good road or bus transit system to work that benefits the entire community?
Well, I think that we neglect our bus systems to our peril, really, because a good, effective transportation system, and it starts with having the backbone of a bus network that works and serves everybody in the community, like you're saying. You know what that is? That's ultimately the sign of a healthy community. There's so many statistics that link transit-oriented communities and transit-oriented lifestyles to these negative health outcomes. So what I keep saying is that, we have to think about where we get our healthy food. We need to think about access to healthy activities. And we need to think about access to public transportation as one of the three pillars of public health. So,
Wow.
we...
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I like the way that you frame this picture of, it's part of a history of neglect of communities where we've neglected communities because of racism, because of exclusion, and all kinds of other things. And public transportation suffers from that stigma, and we need to change that and say this is a core part of being a healthy community.
Paulo, let me ask you another quick question regarding the busing piece. But I guess some of the larger cities I've been in our country, they have a very dependable. Let's just say they have a supporting system with light rail.
Right.
And so I think in some of these the southern cities in the South, like the Jackson, Mississippi's, Memphis, Tennessee's, and some of the St. Louis, Missouri, you don't see that light rail piece. So maybe I don't know, maybe that bus system is, like you said, it's just antiquated, but that's what it was there for, as Marcus was saying, to get folks out to the suburban parts of the community so they could do day labor work, basically, or I guess homework, working in folks' home.
Yeah. But again, what I would say is we need to keep our eyes focused and say we need the bus system to work for today's needs and for the city of today, and make those difficult choices and educate the community about what those choices are, and put that system into place, and then go out and ask folks for more money to build an expensive system that's going to, by definition, serve a limited population.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukia Network.
So how do you do that? What's the prescription for getting that bus system to create this healthy community that we've been talking about?
Well, I think that the start really is to understand what's not working about it today. That a lot of times when you look and you go and you visit a city, what you see is a bunch of spaghetti that's thrown over the city map. Mm-hmm. And literally people don't remember why these routes are designed the way that they are, because they're from 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so, but it's really politically difficult, because there's a vocal constituency that will fight and get really riled up if you change one or two routes. And so over time, people get very entrenched in the agency side in sort of keeping this. I haven't looked in great detail at the Memphis system, so this is not a criticism of what's going on there necessarily. But in a lot of towns, what you have is a bunch of zombie routes that don't really make any sense anymore. Hmm. And so you need to, and yet if you go one by one, it's a difficult conversation with the public. So you need to have a larger vision so that you can go out and have something that people can say yes to. They say, all right, all of these routes are going to change. We're going to start from scratch. We're going to understand what's possible with the current amount of money that we have. Do we want to cover more and more parts of the city with very infrequent service, or do we want to cover? You might want to start that again, because I've got.
That's okay. That's one of those pieces we had. We good. Keep on going, man. We gotta have kids. Yeah. We all got them.
So what you're faced with really is coming up with a large vision that's positive, that people can say yes to, and give up some of the things that they think that they need to fight tooth and nail to keep, that may not be working altogether that well today.
Well, you were speaking about the zombie routes, and I think from looking at it from an urban standpoint here in the South, especially in some of the cities I've been in, I think you're right. But how, like the political will? You talk about the political will. How many board of commissioners of these transit authorities are willing to make that type of decision? Say, look, that doesn't work anymore. If you've got an effective route, and it only carries about 25 persons between the hours of 6 a.m. and 11 p.m. at night, then we may need to look at doing something different. But that route's been around for 50 years, though.
Right.
So who comes up with the will to say, hey, look, it's time to do something different? I guess it's leadership, though, right? From the top.
It is leadership. Yeah, it is leadership, but there's a process. Yeah. That there's a process of engaging the public in a conversation about what is transit for, how can we make it better, what do people want, and then there's a process of engaging with transit planners to design alternatives and actually look at them. And I think what happens often, though, is that we get distracted by the shiny object. We think the system is too hard to fix, so we're going to throw a light rail line on top of it, or we're gonna do one bus rapid transit line on it without looking at the system as a whole. And sometimes what happens there is that generates a lot of resentment because we're creating a two-tiered system that some neighborhoods are getting all of the love. They're getting this fancy new bus or this $1 billion light rail line, and everybody else is still stuck in traffic with the old bus.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukia Network.
Okay, listen up. This is Samuel L. Jackson, and I want to talk to you about energy conservation. If your idea of energy conservation is sitting in a hammock underneath a tree, then I'm talking to you. I want you to weather strip around the windows and doors. Use compact fluorescent light bulbs. Repair leaky faucets and toilets. Don't waste energy. Don't make me have to come to your house and inspect it. Call 544-MLGW or go to MLGW.com and tell them Samuel L. Jackson sent you.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukia Network, sponsored by MLGW, Memphis Light, Gas, and Water. You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukia Network. Doc Ward, how are you, sir?
I'm wonderful, and we're sitting here with somebody from that Emerald City posse about to take this town. Tell us who it is, man.
Paulo Nunes-Ueno.
Gotta wake you up, man.
I know it. Paulo Nunes-Ueno.
Right.
A sustainable transportation expert out of the wonderful city of Seattle, Washington. How are you, sir?
I am doing just fine. Thanks so much for having me on.
Wonderful. One of the things that we've been talking about, I noticed that you've said in conversations, was that a healthy transit system is a key element in a community's public health. We've never heard those two things kind of put together. I understand it, but I've never heard them put together. But could you kind of talk about how that creates a healthy community from a public health standpoint when the transit system is working effectively?
Public transit is part of public health. Can't separate those two things. You know, people who ride transit get more exercise. They walk more. Sometimes you got to run to catch the bus. They have less stress. And there's studies that show that the health outcomes for people that take transit are way better. Lower diabetes, less blood pressure than folks that drive.
Yeah.
So people that take transit, in one study, are 44% less likely to be overweight, 27% less likely to have high blood pressure, 34% less likely to have diabetes. I mean, that's a big difference.
Now, does that come from the exercise of actually catching the transportation, or is it associated with other aspects of being a part of public transportation?
Well, I think that there is an exercise component that you know, studies show that people that catch public transportation walk more, and we know how healthy walking is. But I think that there's a piece of stress that's really important for us to remember that, you know, in most places, for most people, driving is not all that much fun. And that takes some years off your life to be stuck in traffic, to have all that aggression running through your veins. When we look at communities that are transit-oriented communities, compact communities that are well-served by transit, that people are 3 times less likely to die in a traffic fatality than people who live in sprawled communities that have very little transit.
Wow.
You know, and we get 300,000 people a year die in traffic accidents in this country. That's a public health crisis.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukia Network. Now, speaking of that statistic right there, but these other cities with large systems, transit systems, they're also real congested. What about the sprawled out communities? And I'll go back to the South again. The Memphis, the Jackson, Mississippi, the St. Louis. There's a lot of urban sprawl there. So typically you can have a lot more drivers. People just want their darn cars, Paulo. They want the cars.
No, look, I get it, and you can't separate land use planning from transportation planning. It's the same thing. So we know all of the negative effects that sprawl has in the environment, but it also has an impact on people's health. And part of that impact is because people don't have access to transit. It's hard to serve suburbia with transit because there aren't just that many people. So I think that, in cities that are engaging in comprehensive planning for the long term, what kind of city do we want to be? Transit needs to be a piece of that conversation, no question about it.
Doesn't the ability for people to go from one place to another create that need for us as humans to explore, and in that fact become more diverse in our thinking through the things that we see in everywhere?
I couldn't have said it better. I think that's exactly right. That the when we invest in the public realm, we're investing in the community as a whole. And I think the notion that, the public square is where the city goes to see itself. And if we can get to the public square by transit, then we see ourselves on the way there. And, one of the things that I think a lot about is how there's growing social isolation in our world. We've got,
right.
We retreat in our houses, we retreat into the internet, and we know that social capital is kind of fraying in general. People go to church less often. I think that, being out in public and sharing the ride with people is a social outlet for us that's important.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network. And, and I agree with you on that, but I'm going to go back to the old school here, and I'm just thinking that folks are typically, they're the drivers out there. I don't know, if you're going to create a more diverse community, you're going to have folks on a bus or on a L system that may or may not want to be there with each other, and they're going to be still in their own little cocoons, but now, you're there. So you get a chance to hear my music, you get a chance to hear me, you get a chance to see me. So I agree a little bit with what you're saying, Doc Ward and Paul, but I don't know. I think some of us are just still kind of, those of us are still kind of reserved. We don't want to be a part of people. We're not, bus or not, we're not going to do it. We're just not going to do it. It may be healthy in some, but I'm just saying.
I think the issue here is more about opportunity versus will.
Well,
I think now we're functioning in communities where there's not the opportunity. And a lot of people don't know what they're going to like and don't like until they have the opportunity to participate and partake
but we've had this opportunity for years. The buses have been around for years and years and years and years. And
not to every community, and particularly as it relates to suburban access to routes as cities have gotten bigger, as you said before.
Yeah.
So I think with that opportunity for people in the inner city to see the suburbs, they get a new appreciation for suburban life and its people and what it brings, the same way that people in the suburbs can understand urban life. But the transportation system, and I think as Paulo is saying, has to be in a manner that is accessible and that is in an adequate manner for everyone to want to be a part of it. And that's where we are. If I'm not mistaken, Paulo, is that not where we are and where we're trying to go with this new age of transportation?
Yeah, I think that it needs to be frequent, it needs to be attractive, it needs to be clean, it needs to go to where you need it to go. And frankly, I think it can be competitive. It won't beat every single auto trip, but we've got to make it more competitive than it is now. Because, here's the other thing. I was in Memphis last month, and I was talking to a local mayor from a smaller town, and he was talking about what I do, and he said, well, not in my town. In my town, everybody drives. And I'm like...
Sounds like a place outside of Memphis.
I don't think that's the case. I try to be respectful. He's the mayor. But the kids don't drive, and the elderly don't drive, and the visually impaired don't drive. And
maybe they do in that community.
You are the mayor, that's for sure. They can hold the job of mayor.
And what's interesting too is that the mayor was my age, maybe a little bit older. He was maybe in his 50s, and the fact is the kids are getting their driver's license a whole lot less than they used to in the past.
Sure.
Wow.
One study that I saw that said that kids between 16 and 18 are 47% less likely now to have a driver's license than they were in 1983.
Wow.
And so things are changing. You know, I mean, the car was this thing that opened up worlds for us when we were younger. But it's the cell phone.
Yeah.
You know, it's so we're in this interesting moment where there's a lot of frustration with the transportation systems as they are now, and there's a lot of interest because people's attitudes towards public transit is changing. So it's an interesting opportunity.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network.
Okay, listen up. This is Samuel L. Jackson, and I want to talk to you about energy conservation. If your idea of energy conservation is sitting in a hammock underneath a tree, then I'm talking to you. I want you to weather strip around the windows and doors. Use compact fluorescent light bulbs. Repair leaky faucets and toilets. Don't waste energy. Don't make me have to come to your house and inspect it. Call 544-MLGW or go to MLGW.com and tell them Samuel L. Jackson sent you.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network, sponsored by MLGW, Memphis Light, Gas, and Water. You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network. DC sitting in the chair right along Doc Ward. Doc, how are you, sir?
What's a 9-letter word that means strength in the face of adversity?
Perspective.
Perspective.
Yeah.
Let's try fortitude. Because right now we have, I understand, a true woman of fortitude on our airwaves right now. So give her the respect in introducing her the way you know how. Take your wake-up pills and introduce her. Go ahead. Make it work, man. Make it work.
Goodness. We have Sheri Riley,
Thank you.
who happens to be an empowerment speaker and life strategist. Hello, Ms. Riley. How are you? And welcome to Funky Politics.
I am wonderful. How you guys doing?
Oh, we're wonderful.
We're doing wonderful.
We're doing great things here in Memphis.
Wonderful,
Great
wonderful.
things.
And to be in your phenomenal presence and talk to a woman that can talk to us about exponential living.
And talk about that. We want to know a little bit about the Sheri Riley. We know that you've done a lot. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am originally from Kentucky. I live in Atlanta now, and I have worked in the entertainment industry my entire career. I had a dream at a very young age to work in the entertainment industry, realized my dream, had everything I ever wanted at a very young age. I bought my mom a home by the age of 27. I was traveling the world. I was responsible for the marketing of some of the biggest artists in the world. I had an unlimited expense account, high six figures, at 26, 27. Everything I ever wanted, and I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable, right?
Well, I have none of that, and I'm miserable right now. So I have no peace.
And so imagine having all of that and, work so hard for a dream and realize that, I had this really great career, but I didn't have a good life. And so that started me on this journey of basically realizing that I was spending 100% of my time on 10% of who I was. And I thought I was an anomaly. I thought that was just me and my issue. And so I went on this quest to figure out, well, how do I stop doing that? How do I live the other 90%? And as I began to really discover these principles, these truths, and applying them to my own life, a lot of my colleagues who at this point were making, $500,000, $1 million a year, they had the family, they had the spouses, they had these great careers, but they were struggling in the same way that I was. And so I just started sharing with them what was working for me, and it started working for them. And so what I realized over the course of these last few years is what I call exponential living. And it really is the how. How do you stop spending 100% of your time on 10% of who you are? And there's 3 simple truths. Pursue peace, choose clarity, and live courageously.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network. That's what I want to talk about, those 9 principles of exponential living. And you already started on us.
Yeah, so I discovered there's 9 that serve as the real tools to those 3 truths: pursue peace, choose clarity, and live courageously. And so over the last 17 years, actually. I've been applying these 9 principles to my life and coaching others, and they really do work, guys. Like, principles really do work.
Wow. And so when you're on this journey, and I get it 100%, that you were looking at things that everything seemed great, but just the achievement was great, but what you felt inside was not a great situation. So in developing these principles, for anyone that's out there right now, what do you think the first step is that you have to take in order to get to that point to where we can get on the path that you're on? Because DC needs to be on that path. He's not living exponentially.
I'm not at all.
Yeah, he's been at zero for a long time.
Sheri, help me, because my ex-wife's name is Sheri, so you could do well.
Actually, he's less than zero. So how do you get from less than zero to exponential?
The exponential living. Well, the first thing is you have to make a decision.
Wow.
You know, that's the first thing.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing for many of us, is to, one, make a decision. And the very first principle is live in your power. And in order to get started, it all starts with our choices, because many of us will continue to live in the state of denial. Many of us were like, you know what, this may be bad, but I know this bad, so I'm going to just stay here.
Wow.
Kind of like the evil that you know is more
the evil that you don't know, yeah.
There you go, right? And then many of us are just too afraid of what change can really bring us. And so the first thing you have to do is just make the decision that you're willing to take that first step.
So let me say, what kind of led to that? Was it the politics of the entertainment industry that kind of led to your feeling of that you needed to change things? Or was it just the way life was going, period? What made you see that there was a time for you to make a change?
Yeah, well, the first time, because I've done it twice now.
Okay.
The first one was resigning from LaFace and starting my own business, Glue. And for me, I hit complete burnout. Absolute complete burnout. My hair was falling out. I couldn't sleep unless I was drinking a glass or 2 or 3 of wine.
Wow.
I was never present, you know. I was constantly on the move, and I was just literally burned out. And I knew that there had to be more. And I wanted more than just a career. I wanted a family. I wanted to be able to travel. The second time I did it, I then, had to make this decision again after having a business for 17 years, that it was time to close that business. And that was a lot longer. The transition from Glue was very immediate. It was a complete burnout. I'm done. I walked away.
Right.
The second time, it took 3 years. It took 3 years to truly accept that the course was going to change, and that this business that had been my baby for 17 years, it had served its course, and it was time to move on to something else.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network. Now that's one thing that he was talking about, me saying that, hey, look, I need all of this help. But he's right. Some people don't realize when it's time to kind of just,
He said, but he's right.
He is right. And that's the funny thing about, he's never right.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying, Sheri?
The first step is
right.
always to admit you have a problem.
I think that's one of these issues that she's telling me. Just, hey, look, there's an issue.
There you go.
There's the issue. So now, all of that, though, you still were living the life. Everybody wants to live that life that you had, Sheri. And I guess right now, I'm like, man, you had it going on, so all of a sudden you just step back. And so how do you convince people that, look, just take a step back, breathe? That's what it sounds like, to get that inner peace.
Well, you know what's so interesting is that what I realized, and I didn't realize it at the time, but what I eventually realized is working at LaFace Records and working at a record label was only one of my dreams. And I had accomplished that dream. But what happens is many times we accomplish our dream and we just stay. And so we end up 5, 10, 15, 20 years somewhere and don't understand why we really don't feel like we've accomplished anything. Well, you accomplished that dream 15 years ago. Why are you still there? So I realized, right? Like, I did it. I could check it off. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur as well. And so it was really a blessing in disguise that I burned out, because I would have never left. But I also wouldn't have went any further. I would have continued to go up the ladder. I would have eventually have been a senior VP. I would have been a CEO, but I would have still been in the place I was supposed to have left.
Wow.
And so I did the 3 years. I was good, and then I became an entrepreneur. And so what many of us have to accept is sometimes that itch, I left. Many times you don't have to leave, but that itch was more of, girl, you did this. You're done. Yeah. Okay, check that and move on.
Wow.
But a lot of times we don't realize we have the power to make the decision to make that kind of change.
It's kind of like the old Kipling thing. If you can dream but not let dreams be your master, or think and not let thoughts be your aim. If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same, because they really are imposters. But you're not. You are the real deal. And on top of being the real deal, you're also the real deal author as well of that same book entitled Exponential Living. And can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because that is where all of the thoughts come together. I know you've kind of talked with them about the concepts here, but talk to us about this book and what inspired it and where you're hoping to go with it.
Yes, so Exponential Living is the manual on how. 17 years ago was the first time I said, stop spending 100% of your time on 10% of who you are.
Right.
And that really set the course for this journey, because I didn't want to just have this amazing tagline. I really wanted to give the how. And so the book, Exponential Living, it really is that manual. It outlines those 9 principles. It gives you exercises to really go in and do the work. But it also gives you real live examples of how people are actually living it. Because as I've been on this journey, what I met many times was peace is not possible. That's what, Sheri, it sounds good, all that kumbaya, and, all that's great, but it's not possible. And what I had to really begin to help people understand is peace is not stopping and going to sleep or sitting in the corner. Peace is truly where our power is. And I love sports. Larry knows from how long we've known each other. I'm an athlete. I love sports. And so I tell people all the time, when you look at the greats, when you look at the great athletes, the Michael Jordans, the Peyton Mannings, the ones that truly set the bar so high that they're the 1% in their game, they don't get frantic when it's time to step up. They don't start running all over the place. They show up in the most powerful, peaceful calm, because what they've realized is what separates them, what gives them their edge, is not being over the top. What gives them their edge is getting very centered in the core of who they are and tapping into the power of their skills and their gifts. And when people really look at peace that way, they realize peace is not sitting down and settling. Peace is when you get to the highest level of your competencies, your skills, and your power. And so that's what Exponential Living is. It's that book. That book really serves as a guide to help all of us get to our highest place of power, so that our gifts and talents don't take us to levels of success that our character can't sustain.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network.
What you're fucking for. Don't tell me now.
Okay, listen up. This is Samuel L. Jackson, and I want to talk to you about energy conservation. If your idea of energy conservation is sitting in a hammock underneath a tree, then I'm talking to you. I want you to weather strip around the windows and doors. Use compact fluorescent light bulbs. Repair leaky faucets and toilets. Don't waste energy. Don't make me have to come to your house and inspect it. Call 544-MLGW or go to MLGW.com and tell them Samuel L. Jackson sent you.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network, sponsored by MLGW, Memphis Light, Gas, and Water.
Tell me something good. Tell me that you love me, yeah.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network. DC sitting in the chair right along here with Doc Ward. Doc, how are you, sir?
I am wonderful, because it's not often that we get so much phenomenability.
Ooh, that's a new word.
Yeah,
phenomenability?
I can make up words, man.
You made all of them up.
Yeah, I make them all up. I do what I want to do, man.
You the man.
Yeah,
You
be
the man.
formless and shapeless like water. Be water, my friend. That's what Bruce Lee said.
Are you a guru?
No.
Okay.
I drive a Ford.
Oh, God. Today, we're visiting with Sheri Riley, empowerment speaker, life strategist, and author of Exponential Living. And we are glad that you're on our program. How are you, Sheri?
I am wonderful.
Sheri, we just had a turnover in an administration in January. That
A turnover.
I'd like to say, well, it's more than a turnover.
It's a capsize.
But as
a complete upheaval.
Exactly. But as a people, we were happy and glad. And then, of course, when we got this new person, some of us were not as happy anymore. How do we live that exponential life in a climate that's so far since January has proven to be almost detrimental to some people?
And one that is now, I think, a lot of the hate, and you see it now with so many things, from the noose at the Smithsonian to LeBron James door to so on and so forth, to race riots in Portland or whatever they're doing there. How can you carve out, as DC said, a life on the principles of what you consider to be exponential living, particularly as any people, regardless of race, and still live that life and live it more abundantly? How do you do that in the face of what we're dealing with right now?
Yeah, I'm so glad you guys are having this conversation, because it's so critical and it's so important. Because the thing about peace is not about the absence of turmoil. It's about having that center and that calm in the midst of the turmoil.
Oh, wow.
And so that's what people have to really understand, is it's even more critical now that we get very clear, get very strategic, get very intentional, and definitely understand the power that we really have. Because what I believe is that the last 8 years with our former president, who will forever be our president, right?
Yeah.
Is that unfortunately there has been a complacency in the world, because we had a sense of security that there was someone intelligent, informed, and who truly wanted the best for not just his family but for the world. Well, that can give you a sense of complacency. Now we have someone that no one feels safe and secure with, no one. And so what it's allowed us to do is to understand that we have to get very intentional about every decision we make, not just for our families, but for our communities. And we have to get out and vote so that we have a voice in the bigger picture of what's going on in the world. So peace is not the absence of turmoil. Peace is not the absence of someone that's, who's actually in office right now. Peace is when you really understand, now let me get my intention together so that I can get the power that truly is in my realm and in my sphere of influence to do what I need to do for my family, do what I need to do for my community, and see what kind of impact that I need to be a part of in the bigger picture.
You are listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukia Network. Go ahead, Sheri.
So this is the ideal time for us to, wake up, as everyone's saying. Let's get woke, right?
That's right.
This is the ideal time, and I think people are waking up out of the complacency nap that we've been in, and all of us have been in it.
Yeah, well, let's take the politics and the policy out of it, because I think the ideals that are happening, the things that are happening right now, are global in nature, not necessarily related to politics, but they're things that the leaders are not stopping, in terms of sort of the hatred and the clinging to nationalism and the whole idea of who's a patriot and who's not. Those are things that are becoming prevalent now. The things that are more divisive than anything else. So the first thing that we've got to do in a lot of instances is identify what we have and who we are. So from a standpoint of what you're talking about and what you believe in exponential living, in the midst of all of that storm, how do you assess that calm, or how do you bring that calm in so that you can start to approach with the level of calm that you talked about that athletes approach? How do you rein that in the midst of all of these other things that are going on, from the way people think and social ideas, without the politics?
Yeah, well, the first thing we have to do is we have to get present, and we have to remove all the distractions. And what I mean by that is, how much of your time right now, if you looked at a 24-hour day, how much of your time is spent on just distractions, whether it's social media, whether it's the news, whether it's, just sitting around, twiddling your thumbs, whatever that distraction is.
Is it time for us to start scaling this thing called social media back or down a little bit so that people can live these exponential lives? Because I think a lot of it is that we just don't look within ourselves when we're doing things. We're like ants. We're just following the pheromone trail. Is it time to scale some of this back. Maybe we know too much about each other and about what each other is doing because of the availability and all this knowledge. Maybe it's time to temper it a little. Do you think it's time for us to temper that universally so that the lifestyle that and that you're promoting can proceed as a way of life?
It's an individual choice. It's Pandora's box. I mean, you cannot put the internet back in the box.
Oh, no.
But we do have to, yes, you're right, but we do have to, everyone does have to start having a conscious reality around the consumption of it. Because we have a whole lot of knowledge, but we're not wise. We have a whole lot of information, but we don't have a clue. And like with my daughter, my daughter does not have, she's 10, does not have a Facebook, does not have an Instagram. It is not allowed. Our oldest didn't get a phone until she was 17, when she could actually afford to buy it for herself. I've put my clients on 21-day social media fast. I've gone on social media fast. And to be honest with you, during that, my psyche was just like, wow. Like, you realize just how much control that the social media has when you step away from it. Right. So, there does need to be a monitoring, but it's going to take people to do that on an individual basis.
Sheri, tell us right now, where can we see more information about exponential living, by the book? Come on, give me some information. Website I can go to or something.
I am real simple. Everything is Sheri Riley, SHERIRILEY. So that's the website. Come and join my exponential living community there, and definitely follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Sheri Riley. Very simple, very clean, and very easy.
Wow. And you are listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network.
Tell me that you like it, yeah.
Okay, listen up. This is Samuel L. Jackson, and I want to talk to you about energy conservation. If your idea of energy conservation is sitting in a hammock underneath a tree, then I'm talking to you. I want you to weather strip around the windows and doors. Use compact fluorescent light bulbs. Repair leaky faucets and toilets. Don't waste energy. Don't make me have to come to your house and inspect it. Call 544-MLGW or go to MLGW.com and tell them Samuel L. Jackson sent you.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network, sponsored by MLGW, Memphis Light, Gas, and Water. You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network. DC sitting in the chair here, along with, guess what? I got some good friends at the gumbo table today with us. Leviticus Pointer, Shelby County Schools Principal, Gordon Achievement Academy. Mike working with the Working Law Firm. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm great, thank you.
I like that. It was I'm great, thank you. Sounds like Donald Trump. But anyway, and we have the beautiful Rashawn Austin, the Executive Director at The Works Incorporated. Hello, Rashawn, how are you?
Hi, I'm great.
Oh, good. Doc, how you doing, buddy?
I'm wonderful.
As always.
I'm wonderful. Ready to do it?
Ready to do it.
All right. Funky Politics, that's the show. DC and MD are the names you know. Gumbo is the segment that puts you in this groove to get you informed, get you active so you can get up and move. It's gumbo time, y'all. So whether or not you are in Cookietown, Oklahoma, or Wisconsin. Cookietown, Oklahoma.
Or Cream,
Wisconsin. They're listening to Funky Politics.
And Cream. I'm going to let it go at that. But anyway.
Cream, Wisconsin.
Hey,
you
guys,
don't get it?
Don't mind this guy. He's just our resident pros guy.
You don't get it?
Cream, I know I get it. Cream, Wisconsin.
They got cows in
Wisconsin.
Cows,
cheese, dairy,
Yeah, beer.
And I'm lactose intolerant.
Laverne and Shirley, Happy Days.
I dated Laverne once before. A Laverne, not that Laverne. She was like 80 now. But anyway, let me get into this thing. Hold on. Let's talk.
Wow, that's messed up, man.
This gaggle of friends we have with us today, just to talk a little bit about.
You shouldn't have done that to Penny Marshall.
Whatever. Youth. Look, just recently, we've seen in our country where, of course, we've had some of our young black males who have been the subject of some unwanted attention in terms of violence committed upon them. And also, we've just seen in the South, in Jackson, Mississippi, where we had some young men who took the life of a 6-year-old baby. We don't know the full story on all of that yet, but from what the news reports, it looks really bad for those 3 young men. Leviticus, Mike, Rashawn, Doc, we keep beating this dead horse, so to speak, but Our young people. I don't want to talk. We can talk about summer opportunities, but they get up in the morning. It's not summertime. What happens now, Levi? What happens now?
Man, we, as a general people, social responsibility, civic awareness, political savviness needs to be taught at an early age.
Yeah.
And so we are backpedaling with this new phenom of social teenage hoodism. If that's not a word, that's my word.
Oh, that's good.
Hoodism, where lives are not valued. It's a joke. Everything's funny. And so the responsibility has shifted. They said the village raises a child. Well, the village is in trouble. Wow. The leaders in the village are not taking responsibility for developing our youth, let alone train them for a job. Socially and emotionally and psychologically and physically, are we training our kids to be safe, productive citizens? And clearly, we're dropping the ball. We've dropped the ball with this generation. The millennials, the generations. We saw generations that were taught work ethic, personal integrity, things of that nature that we grew up with that are no longer valued in our communities, in our neighborhoods, across the country.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network.
I think the village is probably afraid of the youth for whatever reason.
Wow.
And people talk about
That's the first time I've heard that on this show, that the village is afraid of the youth. That's the first time we've heard that. And we've had a lot of experts in here.
They're treating the village, the youth like strangers, like they've never met them. And for me, speaking to youth, I just may stop on the street to talk to kids in South Memphis and say, why are you on the street? What are you doing? Are you not in school? How old are you? Yeah. And we still think about jobs. And so the reality is that people will never again work 30-year jobs, 20-year jobs.
Sure.
A lot of these kids are not going to go to college, and we try to force them into something that they don't really have an interest in. But are they skilled at something? When the short period I did teach school, my kids that were underperforming, I always looked for things that they liked. And I taught gifted education. I was in special ed. But I had underperforming gifted children. So what do you like? You like horses? Let's talk all about horses. Let's do things around horses. We don't know how to teach our kids how to be entrepreneurs. We assume that they're going to go into the college education. We assume that they're going to go into a traditional job. But there's nothing really traditional about our world in the 21st century.
How do we get those little babies who are not testing well, who are not reading well? Have they been relegated to a life of poverty?
We got to choose them. I don't choose a kid that necessarily looks like me. That kid has access to everything, all of the resources, because they test well. They're a straight A student. They're a teacher pleaser. I choose the kid who needs to grow in terms of their testing. Yeah. I give them some practical experience because it's nothing like practical experience and how that translates into test taking. I give them access to the prep books. I know the tricks on how to take tests. And so I can't do it for every kid, but there are enough of me that if each one of us, this is real cliche, each one teach one. If each one of us at least takes one, and I take way more than one, if I'm seeing a couple hundred kids a day, and I am multitasking in everything I do, but I take that kid, put him in my car, get off the street, come count some pedestrians for me.
Because if they're working, they're not begging,
come sweep
they're not doing this.
the ground so that you don't break the window on my store.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network.
Okay, listen up. This is Samuel L. Jackson, and I want to talk to you about energy conservation. If your idea of energy conservation is sitting in a hammock underneath a tree, then I'm talking to you. I want you to weather strip around the windows and doors. Use compact fluorescent light bulbs. Repair leaky faucets and toilets. Don't waste energy. Don't make me have to come to your house and inspect it. Call 544-MLGW or go to MLGW.com and tell them Samuel L. Jackson sent you.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network, sponsored by MLGW, Memphis Light, Gas, and Water.
Real, right, and funky, that's our superlative. Funky Politics is our name, and our facts are not alternative. We remind you to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Stitcher, Snapchat, Chat, this, chat that, everywhere chat. Even the evening news.
We might be on the evening news.
I don't know, Video Soul, anywhere you guess. We might be anywhere, y'all. Because we're always trying to find the facts, and that's why we keep it real, right, and funky.
That's right.
Every day.
That's right.
And we pay that rent too.
That's right. You got to pay the rent, baby boy. You got to pay it.
Yeah. So in a society right now where people don't know what to think, where to go, you've got cultural riots, race riots, you've got all types of different types of disparity going on. We remind you of one thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very basic statement. You know, it's always the tumult before the calm. Always the tumult before the calm.
Ooh,
and maybe
that's a deep statement.
Yeah, man, you look at an earthquake. An earthquake is just a way of the earth settling and reconciling itself unto itself. You know, the plates move one way or the other, and eventually they settle on what works for the earth, and all of a sudden it becomes stable and calm, at least for a time.
Yeah.
What we're seeing right now is a changing and juxtapositioning of all cultural, all racial, all religious, all of the things that make us great. All of this diversity is coming to settle itself and reconcile itself for whatever it is. So when you start to think about what's happening in the administration, or maybe locally with you, no matter what state or city you live in, or maybe in your corporation, you know, maybe in your country, or maybe in whatever social group you're in, it's just a way of things settling themselves and reconciling themselves unto themselves. The question that we need to ask every individual is, where will we be in that reconciliation?
And the settling.
Right. Will you be on the right side or will you be on the wrong side? Who's to say? But I'll tell you what, as long as you stay true to what really matters, love of mankind, celebration of your talents, exploitation of your gifts in a manner that's good to mankind, and a focus on always being in a constant quest for the truth and to aid your fellow man, no matter what happens when this great rumbling comes to pass, you will be on that right side. And we're going to keep you there, because we're going to bring you everything that we know to make sure that you are fully equipped to handle any circumstance that may befall you, whether it be government, whether it be civic activity, whether it be social activity. We will be there on top of it all day, every day, real, right, and funky, because that's the way we do it. So until next time, DC and I, we invite you, we implore you, we command you, and we request of you that you always keep it real, keep it right, and keep it funky.
Gotta keep it funky.
Right here with us on Funky Politics.
Funky Politics, recorded live at LPI Studios. Executive producer Larry Robinson. Music curation Marcus Ward and Larry Robinson. Design and web by Daniel Coates. Produced by Reggie Fine. Funky Politics, part of the Katsukian Network.